Let me come on to London's Labour Mayor. He was in Perth for your conference, Sadiq Khan. He wrote yesterday in the Record that there is no difference between Scottish nationalism and racism. Would you like this opportunity to distance yourself from that absurd claim?
Well, I think that Sadiq Khan was very clear yesterday that he wasn't accusing the SNP of racism. What he was saying very clearly, though, was that nationalism, by its very nature, divides people, divides communities. And that's what I said in my speech yesterday, that actually I'm fed up living in a divided and fractured country, a divided and fractured society. Our politics is forcing us constantly to pick sides, whether you're yes or no, leave or remain. This brings out the worst in our politics, the worst in our politicians, and all the consensus and progress that we normally find in the grey area is lost, which is why I'm standing at this conference under a banner that together we're stronger, that we have to come up with ideas and values and principles that can bring communities back together, very firmly focused on the future.
Excuse me,
so that's where I agree with Sadiq Khan.
He said quite clearly,
focus on the future.
He said quite clearly in the Record yesterday, and he only then at the last minute adapted his speech to your conference yesterday to try and reduce the impact, that there was no difference between Scottish nationalism and racism. And your colleague Anwar Sarwar said, even after he had tried to caveat it, all forms of nationalism rely on creating us and them. Let's call it for what it is. So you are implying that the Scottish nationalists are racist. Would you care to distance yourself from that absurd claim?
I utterly refute that that is what Sadiq Khan said, and I have never suggested and never would suggest that the SNP are an inherently racist party.
So
I think that does our politics a disservice, and it brings out the worst of it. Well, Andrew, he didn't say it. What he did say, however, is that nationalism is divisive. I think you know that better than anyone. I see your Twitter account. Regularly you are attacked for the job that you do as a journalist. What I'm trying to say is that our politics in Scotland is divided enough. I do not want to revisit that independence question again for exactly that reason, and many others. What I want to do as leader of the Labour Party is try and bring our country back together, appeal to people who voted both yes and no. And actually I think that that banner, Together We're Stronger, the views I have on a federal solution, that's where the answers lie, that's where progress can be found.
But if in the response to Sadiq Khan's remarks, your Mr. Sarwar says, let's call it out for what it is, what's he referring to if he's not implying that nationalism is racist?
He's saying that nationalism is divisive politics and that there is an alternative. And that alternative is something that the Labour Party has always advocated. The idea that together we're stronger.
But
we believe in the
is
collective
different.
And people working together to build their future.
But saying something is divisive is very different from saying something is racist. And that's what Mr. Sadiq Khan said, and Mr. Sarwar was referring to that.
No, he didn't, Andrew.
He said
I'm afraid you really struggled to quote that from Sadiq Khan.
Ms. Dugdale, Sadiq Khan talked about being divided by race. What does that mean?
I think he was very clear that he was talking about divided politics, and I think there's a huge appetite, the length and breadth of the country, to end that type of divisive politics. That's what I stand for.